Do you want to be debt-free for life? That is the topic for today. But before we get to the topic of the day, I have to share a story with you. About 7 years ago, I was talking to my best friend on the phone. At that time, I had a blog and we were bouncing some ideas off as to what the topic would be for the week for the blog. And it came up through the conversation that I had paid about $60,000 of debt off in a year. And my friend said, "Why don't you write about that?" I said, "Who would want to hear about my debt payment?" It sounded like such a boring topic. And there was silence on the phone. And then she started laughing. She said, "Me, I'd want to know." And that conversation eventually led to a book that I wrote. As preparation for that and my blog at that time, as I started to talk to more people, I came to realize that debt has become such an accepted way of being. Although debt causes so much anxiety and a burden, and it's the cause of why most people feel stuck in their job, stuck in a relationship, stuck in whatever circumstance of life, it has become such an acceptable and accepted part of life that we don't think that there's another way. It's absolutely possible to become debt-free fairly quickly and remain debt-free. Not only it's possible, we must do it. We have to do it for our own sanity. It's a two-prong approach to paying off your debt and remaining debt-free for the rest of your life. It's actually the same approach you can then take from once you're debt-free to start building wealth, to save a certain amount of money and then to invest that money or to buy a home or whatever you might want to do with your money. It's the same approach. So the two-prong approach, number one, you have to tackle the mindset. That is number one. There are no two ways about it. And then number two is having a system in place to tackle the debt. So the system is more of specific actions that you need to take, but the first one is mindset. What do I mean by mindset? It's the self-talk. It's knowing that you can do it, you will do it, you must do it. Your financial well-being, just like life in general, it's entirely up to you. The quality of life that you have, quality of financial life that you have, it's entirely up to you and it's fully in your control. That's the mindset piece. And number two is having an actual system in place. And the system is quite simple. There are 5 steps to the system. Number one, you have to know your numbers. How much do you owe? How much do you bring in? How much do you want to save? So knowing all of your numbers takes a little bit of work, a little bit of time commitment. And once you know, keep track of it. Once you start to do it, you'll realize you'll start to enjoy it. I know that does not feel like in the realm of possibility right now, but it's like starting anything new. At first, it's a little bit intimidating, you're unsure, but once you start to do it, it becomes second nature. So that's step number one in the system, is know your numbers. Number two is track your spending, which goes hand in hand with step one. So you track your spending, track your fixed expenses, track your variable expenses. What are fixed expenses? It's sort of the way it sounds. Everything that stays fixed on a month-to-month basis. So that's your mortgage, that's your insurance, that might be your car payment, your phone, your utilities, your cable bill, etc. And then your variable expenses are your food, eating out, personal care items, clothing, medication, anything that varies from a month to month. That would fall under your variable expenses. Before you go forward with any type of debt plan, you have to know your numbers. You have to know what you're spending in terms of fixed and variable. So once you've taken those first 2 steps, then you create a plan. It's a plan for where you want to be. Where do you want to be in a year? Where do you want to be in 5 years? So that's the plan that you want to create once you know what your expenditures are. And then step number 4 is to tackle your expenses. Tackle your fixed expenses, tackle your variable expenses. So let's look at variable expenses first, because they are easier to manage or cut than your fixed expenses might be. So how to cut your variable expenses? Look at everything that you spend on your food, your groceries, your eating out, your personal activities, your parking, your just any miscellaneous items that don't fall under your fixed expenses would fall under your variable expenses. Then take a look at that and tally it up and ask yourself, can I reduce this by 20%, 10%? Generally speaking, if you are really honest with yourself and you are motivated to pay off your debt and you're motivated to save some money, you'll be easily able to cut your variable expenses by 10 to 20%. And if cutting it by 20% was fairly easy for you, then challenge yourself and say, can I cut it by 25%, 30%, 40%? It's entirely up to you. Once you've done that, then move on to your fixed expenses, which is your things like your mortgage, your rent, your utilities, your phone bill, your insurance. And at first blush, you might think, well, that's not under my control. I can't make any changes there. A couple of easy ones are something like cable or internet. So first of all, cable, ask yourself, do you need it? Do you watch it? Is Netflix enough for you? If you subscribe to a streaming service already, is that enough for you? Do you really need 3, 4, or 5 different ways of watching television? If it's not, then get rid of your cable. And again, that's a personal choice, but that's an easy cut. And then you move on to things like insurance or even internet. Call their competitors and find out what their prices are, find out what they can do, find out what they will do if you were to switch. Then take those numbers, call your insurance company, call your cable company, call your internet company and say, hey, this is what I'm being offered, what can you do? Chances are 9 out of 10, if not 10 out of 10 times, you are going to get some type of reduction in your bill. So if that's good enough for you, then you stay there, but you just now have your bill reduced. If not, switch. You can easily shave off hundreds of dollars every single month by spending 10, 20, 30 minutes on making a couple of phone calls. Now you have a bucket of money that you didn't have before. You have shaved off some of your variable expenses. Hopefully you've reduced it by 20% or 10% or whatever the amount might be. Write that amount down somewhere. And then look at same thing with your fixed expenses. Now you've made some calls, you've shaved off a few $100s, hopefully off of your bills. Now you have another amount. Tally those amounts up. So let's say it's $500. Now, depending on how much debt you have and what type of debt you have, you might want to take all of that money and put it towards your debt payment, especially if it's consumer debt, high interest credit card debt. Take all of that money and pay off your credit cards. Or you take some of that money and put it in a sanity fund, which is the next step, step number 5. You want to have a sanity fund. You've probably heard of an emergency fund. So essentially it's the same thing, but I don't like to call it emergency fund. I like to call it sanity fund because language is very, very important. This goes back to that mindset part of the two-prong approach. The mindset prong is whatever we think, whatever we speak has an enormous impact on our life. So I believe that if you're going to call something an emergency fund, you will have an emergency where you'll need that fund. So let's call it sanity fund. It's a security fund. It keeps you sane. It keeps you not worried about where you're going to pay next month's bills and so on. So let's call it a sanity fund. Take some of your money that you saved, put it towards your debt payment plan, and put some of it towards sanity fund. If you've got lot of high interest credit card debt and you want to get rid of all of that, so by all means, everything that you save, make sure that you put it towards a debt payment. Don't fizzle it away. It's not time to go shopping on Amazon. It's not time to buy a new pair of shoes. Take all of that money that you saved, pay a full payment of all of that money towards your credit card, or take half of it, put it towards your debt, and the other half put it in a sanity fund. And trust me, as your sanity fund starts to grow and your debts start to fizzle down, you are going to get more and more encouraged and inspired to do even better. And the final step is investing. Step number 6 is investing. I won't get into that in any detail in this video. Maybe I'll make a separate video for that because I think that deserves a lot more time on its own. So that's the final step. But before you get to that step, you need to take care of the first 5 steps. If you could have those taken care of, step number 6 is where you start to build wealth, where you start to build your future. And you'll get to a point where you'll only work if you want to work. Your investments over time will grow in such a way that you'll have this nest egg. You can live off the interest. You can continue working in a way that you want to work, whatever that might mean for you. You might want to work part-time, or you want to spend more time with your kids, or you want to start a passion project, a business that you might have been dreaming of for a long time, but you didn't think it was possible because you had to stay in this job that you didn't like because you needed to make certain amount of money to pay off your debt, and so on and so forth. So the point of becoming financially independent and being debt-free is not so that you could lay on a beach somewhere for days on end. Maybe you may want to do that for a while, but I think you're going to get bored. But the point is to live your life in a way that you really want to live your life, in an authentic way, in a light and free way, where you are not burdened with bills and you're not burdened with having to do things that you don't want to do, and you create yourself a financial buffer. Let me know in the comments below if you tried this, or how it's going, or what are some of the things that you're doing. What are some of the ideas that you might want to share that have worked for you in paying off your debt or staying debt free. And if you liked the video, don't forget to like and share, and please subscribe. I upload new videos every single Thursday. I'll see you next Thursday.